Everybody, this is Steve with Smitty's Fly Box. This month we're going to tie a dirty bugger. This is an articulated streamer, basically articulated woolly buggers. It's been a good fly for me this fall. It's pretty lightweight. It's got a little weight, not too heavy. You can tie it with a lot of flash or not so much flash if you like. But this has just been a good producer for me, and so I thought it would be a fun one for us to tie. So we're going to start here with our back hook, a Daiichi streamer hook, size 8. And so we'll just attach our thread, build a little thread base, clip off the excess, and we're going to take our thread back to our tie-in point directly above the barb of the hook, back in there, and come forward just slightly. So I just need a good piece of marabou, and I'm going to brush that down to the size that I want, the size of the length of the hook shank. And then I'm going to trim off the excess and leave some butts there that I can capture and tie down. So I'm going to tie those down nice and firm and just come right back over them, back to our tie-in point right there. Now for some flash, we've sent you some angel hair in this kind of multicolored rusty olive. And you can put as much flash or as little. This is real fine stuff, so if you only want a little flash, I like to get just a little sliver like that. And it's kind of crazy because it's all different lengths and stuff, so we'll just get a clump here, and I like to try to tie it down in the middle and then fold over the other side too. So I kind of have two little layers going down both sides of the fly there. All right, let's just trim the excess to about the length of the tail, like that. All right, now let's tie in our polar chenille. I'm going to advance my thread just forward up towards the front of the hook. And I've sent you two colors of polar chenille, kind of a brownish one and an olive one, so you can do a couple different variations if you'd like. And I'm just going to lay that right down along the hook shank, back to our tie-in point. And then let's take a piece of strung hackle. I'm going to hold it by the tip and just pull back some of those hackle fibers to where I can get down to a kind of a meaty part of that stem and tie that in going forward. You can trim off this tip ends now. We're going to cover all that up, but let's advance our thread to the eye of the hook. It's a good time now to just lay down a little bit of Zap-A-Gap or super glue or whatever you have for that underbody. And we're just going to tie this woolly bugger style. So let's take the polar chenille first. And it's going to kind of have this straggly flash. I just lay that down and make nice good tight wraps right over that super glue going forward. Once we reach the eye of the hook, just hold it straight up in the air with our right hand, drop our thread over with our left hand, and now we can trim off the excess. All right, let's just take a second, make a few more turns, secure that in and clear out that eye if we did get some materials trapped up there. All right, let's take our hackle now and we'll carefully run that through all that polar chenille. And then once we get up to the front here, make one good turn. We'll hold that with our right hand, drop our thread over with our left hand about 3 times. Okay, same thing. Let's just build a neat head there and tie down any trapped fibers. And now we can whip finish and move on to our front part of the hook. Here, and I'm going to use some backing for the connection on this particular one. But for this part, you will need a decent bobbin threader. So I'm going to run my bobbin threader up through the eye of the hook. And this stuff will probably have a little frayed edge. Just take one, oops, missed it. Just take one down through like that. Okay, now let's just pull that back out of the way. Oops. And let's run our bobbin threader down the opposite direction. And this is where we go. Okay, so we want it like so. Now I don't want to pull the whole thing through, so I'm going to bring this down and actually hold the top part back and the loop back. And run the front through. Now be careful you don't pull the whole thing through like I almost did there. All right, let's even those tips up. So you should have a loop like so. And now let's just stuff those tips, frayed edges I guess you could call them, and pull those through like that. And now we have the connection there, like so. All right, let's just set this aside for just 1 second. And let's go to our front hook. So we're using a number 6 Daiichi hook now. Place that in the vise. And let's just lay down a good thread base here for just a second. And I'm actually going to make a few wraps up real tight up under the cone there, just to build up some thread up in there. You can put some lead wire and lock it in place. That's helpful and also adds a little extra weight. But now we've got this all set up, let's take our thread back to our tie-in point directly above the barb of the hook right there. And this is where we will attach our back fly. So I just line the eye of the hook with the bend of the hook right there like that, and then pinch that right on top. Now I try to keep those from twisting as much as I can. Just keep those right on top like that. In fact, if you split the uprights just barely and just come around and just capture. I'm gonna make a few wraps just to keep that on top. And now we'll come forward, and that should push those together like so. All right, before I move on, let's come back with our Zap-A-Gap and lay down a nice little layer right there. Now we're just going to tie that backing right down on top. So let's just come forward, push that down on there, and tie that all the way up here to the cone, like so. Fold that back over, like so, and bring that right back where we came from. That should be pretty solid in there. And now we can just build our fly right on top of that. So, all right, let's start with our marabou right there directly above the barb of the hook. So let's get us a nice piece of marabou. And we'll tie that down. Let's take a little flash now. Secure that in. Let's fold the other side over and wrap it back so we've got some on both sides. Okay, I'm going to just trim up that flash to about the same size. Okay, and now we'll go with our polar chenille for the cone. Now we'll take the tip, piece of hackle, that in there. Just gonna tie that down. Again, take our thread up behind the cone, and now let's wrap our polar chenille. And we'll secure that in there. All right, now we'll take our strung hackle and let's just bring that up through. Let that blend in there with that. Give it one good turn right up behind the cone, and now we'll secure that in. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to go one more. Let's make a few turns there and just make sure that's secured in there and build a nice little collar. Now what we'll do is we'll take one more piece of marabou and we're going to lay down a nice piece of a nice wing up there that's going to extend just almost past the back of the hook. So once we have that, we'll just tie that in there nice and tight. And now we can trim off that marabou. I'll twist it just a little bit so I can get down in there. And if you want, you can put a little flash up in the wing. This one, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm just going to build up a little collar there and we'll whip finish that. Okay. The one thing I like to do is take a little head cement, kind of pull everything back, super glue, and let's just take some down and let it drop down into that cone. Be a little easier with a different applicator. And then I like to push my cone up onto it and hold it in place for a second and let that kick. And just help lock that cone right up into the fly there like that. And there we go.